Welcome to TRF Tuesday, our weekly mini workshop series from Bright Voices in Therapeutic Embodiment. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It's the best way to let YouTube know that you find this content valuable and to show it to more people. Dawn and Stefan, we're so happy to have you. Take it away.
Thanks for having us. What an honor. Truly.
It's great to be here.
Thanks. Welcome, everyone. And first thing I'd love for you to check in with is, first we're going to go from the top down. I'm just going to ask you invite you rather, to listen for a moment to your expectations. Listen to what you're hoping for out of this. What are your hopes or your expectations? And just observe that and know that I will aspire to meet them. We will aspire to meet them, but likely won't in the 20 to 25 minutes we have. So check in with that for a moment. Then take a moment, if you would, before we even begin, to check in with your body. Observe your own body in space. And observe that when I invited that observation, if your impulse was to change the way your body was organized. All are valid. We're hoping to create here is a judgment-free zone. We're not shaming of, you did this or didn't do that. We're just observing, what do I do? And what do I do in what scenarios? So observe your body in space right now. Like I said, observe if you had an impulse to change it when I brought awareness to it, or if you didn't. Observe if you feel your body in space. Observe if you're unable to feel your body in space. Take a moment to observe your own breath. Can you feel the three-dimensionality of your body as you're breathing? Or is it foreign to you, or is it numb? Just checking in. We're doing mild check-ins of different parts of our body. And I'm going to invite you, since we're coming from a theater program, theater perspective, I'm going to invite you to check in with your jaw, your relationship with your jaw, particularly your lower jaw. And observe if your teeth are together, and if your lips are closed, or if you might be able to invite your lower jaw to hang freely, allow your lips to be parted, and to dare to be a mouth breather. From our earliest ages, we're told all of these things that bring in that jaw tension. Chew with your mouth closed, use your inside voice, and anything that you personally might have received at a young age. So check in with that. I'll invite you to allow yourself to dare to be a mouth breather here. And observe if you're able, when that clicks off. If you're able to do it for a breath or two, but then we go right back to the jaw tension, observe that. We're not judging our body. It protected us. Whatever age you are, it got you to this point, in spite of all of the things you've been through. So we're grateful that that tension had to come in when it needed, but at this moment we're going to see if we can let it go. Just checking in with your body again. I popped around like popcorn. I'm going to take a moment to follow Lady Macbeth's advice and go from what Shakespeare calls the crown, or the top of the head, to the toe. She talks about being filled with direst cruelty, but what we're going to observe or see if we can do is invite observation without judgment. So begin at the top of your head, and you can see Dawn to whatever, if you're mirroring, she's to my left. But Dawn's checking in right now, just doing mild tapping. And you can do any version of this as we go from the crown to the toe. You can do any version. You can visualize, you can make contact, but what I'm going to invite you to do is follow your impulses. If you have an impulse to make contact with some part of your body that I mentioned, or avoid it, follow that impulse. If you'd rather than, as Dawn's doing, make contact with a part of your body, send sound to it, try that. The thing about theater as a healing, as medicine, is it's a place where we can try things that feel like life or death, but we survive, which can be very different than our childhood environments or my former job in the Army. This is a place to explore and to literally, it's called a play in the theater. So again, I did a lot of talking there, checking with the top of our head. You can bring the awareness now down to your eyebrows. Yeah, yawns are wonderful. And now that I said that, it may invite a yawn for you. Allow that to come in. Oh, I see Penny Lee, a fellow veteran, is online with us as well. Allow that focus to come down around the eyes, the jaw again. Check in the time I was talking. Did the jaw come closed again? We find that in veterans in battlefields, archaeologists were finding cracked teeth out on the battlefields of ancient battlefields, and the ones who were not veterans couldn't figure out why there were cracked teeth until veterans became archaeologists and said it's because we clench our jaws so hard from the terror or the excitement or what have you that we crack teeth. So know that your jaw can carry that much tension, and right now it doesn't need to. Now bring your awareness down to your neck that sits on top of your torso. Then bring that focus down to your sternum. We're all here from the mental health world. You probably know Stephen Porges and the polyvagal theory. Observe where that sternum is organized on your body right now. Is it pointing inward towards your intestines? Is it crunching down inwards? It might be. Can I lift that up a bit? Is it up projecting forward towards the wall? And again, there's no right answer here. We're just observing what is it doing and what is it like to try the opposite. Allow your arms to dangle from your shoulder joints. Allow your torso to breathe three-dimensionally, very fluid, very soft if you're able. Allow your belly and your back to be fluid and soft. And that big, beautiful bowl pelvis that holds us up, where is that organized? Is it underneath me? Am I lying down? Is it supporting me as I sit? Am I back in the chair? Am I forward in the chair? Am I on the ground? Wherever it is, just observe it. Bring awareness to it. If you have legs, some of us do, some of us don't, bring that awareness down to your legs. If you formerly had legs, remember what you had. And if you've never had them, bring either to the awareness of your imagination or bring them to the extent of what you might have protruding down and extending down from your beautiful torso and your pelvis. What beautiful portions are extending out from there? Bring it to the end of that. For those who have legs or had them one time, bring that awareness all the way down past the knees, the shins, to the feet, and as Lady Macbeth talks about, to the toes. As you bring that awareness from that internal focus, can I keep all of that internal awareness and begin to include the external world? And as I say that, what is that rate? Is it rapid? Is it slow? Is it somewhere in between? Am I unable to do it? Do I lose all the internal focus? And does it shift to the external focus? Again, all answers are positive. We're just observing without judgment here. Yeah? Keeping all this internal focus, including the external world, and then seeing you on screen. So bring your focus back to us if you're able. For those who survived, as we have we're going to self-disclose a lot, just so you're aware. For those who have survived adverse childhood experiences, I believe is the more term that's a little less aggressive, and or fellow military veterans, you may need to check in for your egress points. Let's just bring that in the room and be aware that, yes, I need to know where the door is, I need to know it's locked, I need to know where the window is and have the curtains closed. I bring that into the room so that anyone who works with fellow veterans, to invite that into the room and allow it. It's already there. So what is it like to just say, yes, my egress points are the door here and that window there. Currently they're locked and secure enough for me to bring that focus inward. So sometimes you may need to do that before you bring that focus inward. Lovely. Lovely. So with all of that, bring yourself back to the space if you can. And we're going to leap right into Shakespeare. And we're going to, at DE-CRUIT, we prefer to do rather than talk a lot. We did this grounding body awareness to give you the template of how we're going to work and how classical actor training works as medicine, which is internal focus. Can I bring that into some form of regulation, or at least observe it, whether it's in regulation or out of, and then include the external world. So that's the template, and Shakespeare offers us a lot of tools to help continue that path. So let me see what we've got here for folks joining us. Harvey Stone, hello, welcome. Thanks for volunteering to be on here. Would you be up for reading some Shakespeare if I put it up on screen? Would that be something you're okay? Lovely. Lovely. So I'm going to put it up, and I want to invite you the opportunity also. Oh, we also have Sandy. Yes. Hi. Thanks for putting that out, Dawn. I want to make sure that everyone that's watching, whether it's taped or live, know that you, Harvey, and Sandy, if you choose to participate, You have complete autonomy over your experience. So you can pass on anything, have the audacity to say, yeah, I'd rather not, or I move to the next thing, or I pass. So you have that, how should we say it? That it's your decision as far as where we go with this. First thing I'm going to do is bring up on screen some text. Yes, it has color in it, but I just want you to observe the text. And this is for everyone watching. This is a little monologue from Shakespeare. And we'll get into the details of it maybe another time. But today we're just looking at it very generically. Yes, I've color-coded it. But I'd love for you to just take a glance at it. And this is for everyone. You can answer for yourself. There is no right answer. I want to be very clear that as I ask questions, this is not academia where I'm striving towards a goal or an answer. This is theater, and the most wonderful thing is when people come up with things that we've never thought of before. We love this. And veterans do it to us daily. So with that, Harvey, I'd love for you to look at it and regardless of if you're experienced with Shakespeare or not, I'm just curious what you observe on the page. And I know I've colorized it so that interferes a bit, but what, if anything, about the form or anything that pops out at you? Anything at all?
I'm not sure if it's is it all Lady Percy?
That's a great question. In this case, it is. It's all Lady Percy. I've color-coded it in advance to work with that. But yeah, it's all one person speaking all of this.
It sounds like an internal dialogue that she's having.
Might be. So let's do this. Let's leap in. And I'm going to give you a single instruction for this, if you would. I'm going to invite you to breathe in before each line. Do you see here how it's, I know it's color-coded and this is going to be a little confusing, but what I mean by line is you can see that the first line begins with O, the next line begins with for, the third begins with A. So if you're able to ignore the color coding for now, I would love for you to just read a few lines and then I'll chime in for you just to breathe in and speak a line of verse, and let's see what happens. So off you go.
Oh, my good Lord, why thus alone?
Breathe in.
For what offense have I this fortnight been a banished woman from my Harry's bed?
Breathe in.
Tell me, sweet Lord, what is that takes thee from thy stomach, pleasure in thy golden sleep?
Wonderful. We're going to go with just that much. First of all, well done. Beautiful reading. You just read Shakespeare. You sight-read Shakespeare in public. We know from social psychology that speaking in public for most human beings is more terrifying than death. So you not only did that, but you did it with Shakespeare. So our acknowledgement is genuine. Our love and admiration for you doing so is sincere and genuine. So having read it, what things came up for you? Thoughts, questions, feelings, anything is game.
Words that stood out.
Yes. Thank you.
Anything.
I was trying to feel what the words were and to put myself into her, what it would be like to be her in this situation, that she's struggling with these questions. These must be questions that are compelling her at this stage in her life. Right now.
Yeah, lovely observation. How about speaking in, pardon that noise there. What was it like to attempt to breathe in before each new line instead of where the punctuation might have been?
It gave me that extra second, in a sense, to come to that next line and with more openness, more richness. Yeah.
Lovely. Let's try. Are you up for trying it again and adding just a little bit more? Lovely. So we're going to do just those number of lines again. And I'm going to see what it's like. So do you see this part where it says, tell me, sweet Lord, what is that takes from thee? Even though the impulse is to read the whole line. Oh, and also, thank you, Don. For what offense have I this fortnight been a banished woman from my Harry's bed? Even though you have however many years of education you have telling you to go all the way to the punctuation, I want to see what happens to your central nervous system if you breathe in before each new line of verse instead of where the sentences are. So instead of one breath, for what offense have I this fortnight been a banished woman from my Harry's bed? What would it be like to breathe after the word been and before a banished woman? Let's just try it, see what happens. Dare to fail, dare to have it short circuit you, or whatever happens. Allow it. I invite you to allow whatever happens to happen. Off you go.
Just that line, those two lines.
I'd love for you to read actually what you just did, the first, whatever it was, five lines.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, my good Lord, why are you thus alone? For what offense have I this fortnight been a banished woman from my Harry's bed? Mm-hmm. Tell me, sweet Lord, what is that takes from thee? Thy stomach, pleasure, and thy golden sleep.
Beautiful, beautiful work. I'm going to stop share just so it's not abrupt and upsetting. There we are. Wonderful, wonderful reading. So share with us, if you would, if anything, if you're able to observe any difference between the first time, and we're not looking for correctness, what happened to you reading it the first time versus the second time?
The stopping mid-sentence, mid-punctuation, felt like it was taking away from the line.
Okay. Lovely.
Line.
Lovely.
Taking away from the power of the two lines together. It didn't feel natural.
Okay, got it. And I'm willing to bet then you have some experience with Shakespeare previously, yes?
No.
Or no? You don't? Oh.
I have experience, a lot of experience public speaking.
Lovely. Sure. Gotcha. Okay, that helps a lot as well to understand that. So what else, if anything, came up for you first time versus the second time?
Because I knew the words a little better, I felt a deeper questioning. I felt the questioning she was asking more deeply.
Wonderful.
So I was reading words. I now knew the words to some degree.
Wonderful. Thank you, Harvey. Very, very informative. And it may not have been. Was there anything that you observed in your body, perhaps with your breath or skin or anything at all?
No, not really. I could observe my breath. The taking of the breath.
Gotcha.
I did not observe other parts of my body.
Lovely.
I could feel myself. My hands were getting into.
Lovely.
Well, I guess you can see some of my hands there.
Yeah, we can. Thank you. Lovely. Harvey, thank you so much. So I'm going to use this to segue in. Part of this is the wonderful thing about TRF giving us more than one single session here is, and they're short and digestible, is that for us to practice more of what we do in the rehearsal room, which is we get to where we get. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to pivot instead of going down to the rest of the monologue. I'm going to share why we use Shakespeare and what you just so brilliantly shared with us. So thank you, Harvey. And I'm going to switch to a page from a manual. I should do an activation warning. By the way, for the civilians joining us who are not military veterans, in DE-CRUIT we use activation warning, more a term from psychology, rather than trigger warning, because for those of us who served, trigger has an entirely different connotation. So just know that I'm replacing that word. An activation warning for any veterans, I'm about to show a page out of an actual field manual that we call FMs in the military on marksmanship. So with that, allow me to share this page. And I want to share this so that you have an idea of how we view what the military does and theater much more closely aligned than one would imagine who hadn't been through both. What this is a page from FM, you can see at the bottom. Field Manual is what FM stands for, 3-22, and it shows us who joined, who maybe never fired a weapon, how to fire the weapon more accurately. And what they do is invite us to manipulate. They don't invite, they enforce. Big difference there between military and theater. They enforce that we breathe, manipulate our breath in order to fire more accurately. Breathe in, you can see, and then out. And this is what this is showing of how to do it. Breathe in, hold your breath, squeeze a trigger in between your heartbeats, because your heartbeat actually causes your body to move. It's that minute. The minutia of our body is examined in the military and then wired, as we talk about in DE-CRUIT, wired for war. But the reality is that the vast majority of we veterans who join those of us who've joined the military come from adverse childhood experiences. A Harvard study as well as the Department of Defense have shown this. So we already come in with some wiring. So the military takes that pre-existing wiring, surviving adverse childhood experiences. The reason I bring that up is, and I'm starting to rush, so let me breathe and slow down for a moment. What happens is in our adverse childhood environments, we manipulate our breath either wittingly or unwittingly and change the way we breathe and the way we stand and the way we express ourselves and the way we are present in order to survive that environment. I would argue that the military is aware of this, brings us in and shows us a new way to wire it. They show us how to breathe, manipulate our breath to fulfill the mission, to complete a task. I'll get into next week what the 4 tenets of this are, but that doesn't matter right now. Yeah, what were you going to say?
I was just going to add specifically that when we say wired for war, we mean specifically to respond to orders without thought and to respond to a threat with violence. That is the wiring. That is what it is for in the military.
So how does this relate to Shakespeare? I'll do my best to wrap this to a point so you can ask specific questions. Shakespeare wrote, and I'm going to share another screen, pardon me here, as we just saw so brilliantly from Harvey, Shakespeare wrote in a rhythm that's already in our natural human heartbeat. Pardon me while I find it. Here we are. If we look at what Shakespeare did, he wrote in a rhythm that's already in what the military uses. He gives us, it's called iambic pentameter. Who really cares? What he's looking at is 5 heartbeats per breath. For those of us who are of a certain age, when we learned CPR back in the day, it was 5 chest compressions to 1 breath. Shakespeare did this, and we just saw Harvey do it. So do it with me, if you would. We breathe in, and we speak that first line. Oh my good Lord, why are you thus alone? 5. Take a breath in. For what offense have I this fortnight been? A banished woman from my Harry's bed. We're going to go just that far. He wrote in a rhythm that allows us to not only express deep personal thoughts or questions in a navigable form, or as we'd say in psychology, in regulation, but he also gave us a template of how to recover from many emotions that come up. And I'll give the short example. We'll dive into this more deeply next week. But if we look at what Harvey did so beautifully when he shared these 2 lines, for what offense have I this fortnight been? If we were in the room, what we would ask is, what was it like for the listeners to hear him say, for what offense have I this fortnight been? A banished woman from my Harry's bed. That suspensive can not only create in the listener an anxiety, if you will, or a holding or a suspense, but for the breather, it does that, but it also allows us to catch a breath and move to the next thought. So when we get into things like Hamlet, who's asking to be or not to be, that is the question, he's giving us this line to breathe in, express, breathe in, and move to the next line. That way we can have emotions, but we're not trapped in them, as Bessel talks about in the book. We're not trapped in the cycle of emotions. We're not trapped in a single emotion or a single thought or even a cycle of many. We're instead, Shakespeare's giving us a template to breathe in, feel fully, oh my good Lord, why are you thus alone? But then to breathe in and ask the next question, for what offense have I this fortnight been? A banished woman from my Harry's bed. What is that like to ask your combat veteran spouse these symptoms? And the last thing I swear, because I know I'm a little over on time, is that Jonathan Shea, in his book Achilles in Vietnam, who worked with veterans from the war in Vietnam, took this, oh thank you Don, beautiful, thank you, you're so brilliant, we have it up here for you. Jonathan Shea, in his book Achilles in Vietnam, takes this speech from Shakespeare, written over 400 years ago, and next to each question that Lady Percy is asking her combat veteran spouse, next to each question is a symptom out of the diagnostic manual, the DSM, describing post-traumatic stress. And yes, I dropped the disorder. I just say post-traumatic stress. So that's how ancient these issues are. Shakespeare was aware of it. So it's not just, hey, he's brilliant, we should celebrate him. He's brilliant because he was asking these questions of today that are ancient, that go back even beyond, well beyond Shakespeare. But he also offers us today the template within which, basically a box breath, within which we can self-regulate, but bring up deep, important ideas that we may have kept secret. He also provides the language that we may be lacking to express our own experience or ask our combat veteran spouse. So with all of that, thank you, Don. That was a lot. I know I threw a ton. We threw a ton at you, and here we are. But that's the beginning unit, if you will, or of what we're going to share. We'll dive in even further next week. But I think this might be a great time to ask questions. And I want to thank Sandy and Harvey for volunteering. Sorry I didn't get to you, Sandy, but next week if you come back. And so I'll turn it over to you, Mary, if I can. Help us out.
That was so interesting. It's amazing that Shakespeare had all of this insight when he did. It's so pertinent to modern time.
Yeah, England was in 2 wars at the time that Shakespeare was writing.
Yep.
And so he was surrounded by veterans, and he knew a lot of veterans.
Yeah, and the same people were fighting then as today, the working class. And he was seeing them and hearing their stories and putting it in. So yeah.
Wow, what a great exercise. It makes me so excited for the next few weeks.
Carol, we see this comment from Carol, when he breathed at the start of each line, I felt more that he was thinking the thought, right? That it was discovered. Because in real life, we don't speak in complete sentences at all.
right.
We stop in the middle all the time.
Yeah, and define the language. And that's the difference that Shakespeare's offering versus when we're trapped in our traumatic experience. We lose the language and we go into our fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or other. But Shakespeare instead is saying, it's okay. Of course you don't have the full question or the full language, but he's giving you a place to breathe, reset the limbic system, and go into the higher brain to express yourself fully and allow vibrations, which is what we're going to get into next week, vibrations in the body that we may have numbed out in order to survive our past.
Another good comment here is I love the instruction to breathe before each line. It gives you control in a moment to regroup and then dive back in.
That's exactly what we find in the room. That's exactly why we use it. There are many ways to look at Shakespeare, but that's exactly why we use it that way.
Yeah.
Do you find that brings people to focus on the content more, or is it just to, like, what is the purpose there?
Both are true. Yeah, both are true. And when we do the long running classes, like we did when we had ongoing Monday night classes for years in New York, then we can dive that deeply in. But usually early on, when people are coming to it for the first time, it's more of a tool to observe my body without judgment, to be able to observe, what is it doing? Because then things that can happen. So Harvey was this exemplary example of how to speak it so clearly and beautifully. He's a public speaker, so he does this. But what we also love is when people come without any of the experience, and if you trip over a word, for example, trip over a word. Of course you are. It's this English that we don't speak. It's this heightened poetry, and we want that. We want to know when that happens in quote unquote public, in our room, what happens. What happened to my body? Well, my jaw tightened up, or my throat tightened, we can begin to track in the body what happened, and we can begin to ask the question, when is the earliest that began? We can get to what Bessel's talking about in the book on their own time, in their own journey, merely by using Shakespeare as a tool to observe my body without judgment. But to go back to the minutiae, to the foundations, we're not talking about presenting Shakespeare in public. We're so far from that's not even remotely a goal for the vast majority of the veterans we're working with. What we're after is when we try to do something that's against all this training that we've had breathe at the sentence, at the punctuation, speak clearly. What starts to creep in? What starts to creep in are all the voices that said, you have a bad voice, you're a bad reader, or you blah, 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 da, da. All these things that creep in, and we can begin to bring that in the room and be honest about it. And once it's given voice, then it loses some of its power. And we go, okay, great. You don't speak badly. You have a beautiful voice. And we would love to hear it in this space. Be in a space where you have, as he talks about in chapter 14 with the structures, we borrow some of that language. We want to be the ideal teacher, the ideal parent, if you will, in the room, holding an ideal space where they can try things, fail, and be loved for it. And we can see the body's like, what? I do it myself, right? There's all this resistance that happens. But the last thing I'll say on it, too, Pat, is that what this rhythm does is helps us all entrain, right? It brings our heart. Shakespeare's setting the tempo for our heartbeats. Ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. We all begin to entrain, and we begin to breathe together. And then the witness, the audience, also can settle in and be supportive of the actor, if you will, when we adopt the actor-audience relationship.
I have like just a personal question. Why do you choose Shakespeare? Do you find that it being something that is maybe more foreign, just like something that's not in their wheelhouse, has benefits? Or if people were to do Harry Potter, something that's personal to them, is there a pros and cons to that? Like what do you?
Absolutely, yeah. So because he wrote in a rhythm our body recognizes without being conscious of it, falls.
Let me add, aside, totally talk about that. But let's say that said example was in Iambic Pentameter,
Yeah. Well, and it doesn't have to be, because I was going to say is that we've had quite a few veterans bring in other forms, other poets in a different rhythm that spoke to them. We've also had people where English was the second language, so they brought in other poets in other languages. We've even had a veteran that brought in Psalms because the Bible was so meaningful to them, and it turns out that's actually written in the same form as Shakespeare at the same time. But it's about the verse. It's about breathing in. For us, it's about breathing in, but the breath in to then express, and then breathing in. And any form that allows you to breathe in, express fully, and then move to the next thing, we find is beneficial. We use Shakespeare because he writes the veteran experience so perfectly, and we're passionate about it. That's one of the things we met and started dating over was Shakespeare. So that's But
also with the full awareness that it was used as a colonizer's tool, and so that what was important to me was that we are looking that we're actually decontextualizing the pieces that we use. We're specifically editing them for the population that we're serving. Yeah. So when we work with prisoners, we choose different monologues. When we work with veterans, we have different things, and they're all edited for an emotional content and then paired with a narrative writing piece. Yeah. So we do use it with that awareness. We use it as a tool, and we are aware.
And conjuring up their experience, and so they can have their full experience and recover from it. Yeah.
He just wrote so beautifully about the condition of being human. Yeah. And yes, also I think it is important to recognize that for most people, Old English, 400 years old, it wasn't even the language they used then, actually. He made up so many words. So for many people, you're correct. It is like a foreign language. But what's one of the things that trauma robs from us is this, right? When we shut down and we're going limbic, the ability to process language, to make language, all of that recedes. So looking at something, right, is forcing those centers back online.
What I'm asking, is there a reason to force sort of, you have to work a little harder, your ears need to turn a little harder to speak these words. And
Absolutely. Yeah, we could talk forever, obviously, but forever on just that, because asking when someone doesn't know what a fortnight is or how to pronounce it necessarily, or some other words, like I said, the audacity, that's what we love about him, is he's forcing us to stand up in front of other people and speak things that we've never seen before and may not know how to pronounce. So what's it like to fail, quote unquote, in public? That's a benefit that Shakespeare brings to this. I love the question. Have you written a book on this? It's coming. It has been for a while.
But I will make sure that Mary has the information. DE-CRUIT has been in 4 different books. So we have chapters in books about the process and about what we do with specific examples. And there's several articles and a lot of published research that's on our website, which is www.decruit.org. So there is information there.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.